Let's start by looking at one of the most common calls we have to make during a game, holding. This foul, probably more than any other, explains the need for a philosophy. If we take a look at the rule, we don't really get a lot. All the book really tells us is that a player shall not use hands, arms, or legs to hold another opponent. We know that, but what it doesn't really tell us is what is holding. We get pointed to some other rules and get told about the closed hand technique, the open hand technique, the speed of the elbow and initiation of contact. But none of us really think about that, and that's not really a whole lot that ever gets talked about. Basically, what we have is a rule that says a player shall not hold, but it doesn't tell us anything else. So how do we really decide when we need to throw a hold? Well, we try to put things in categories. And these categories of holding help us to come to some common themes of what is a foul and what isn't. First category is a grab and restrict, in which a blocker grabs an opponent and materially restricts him. Another category is a hook and restrict, meaning that the blocker extends his arm across a body and pulls back with a material restriction. A takedown is pretty much what it sounds like. It's something that starts as a grab and restrict and then ultimately takes that opponent to the ground. And the final category is a tackle, where the blocker either outright tackles somebody and takes him to the ground, or swipes at his lower legs and trips him and materially affects his pursuit. Important thing about the categories is this gives us something to look at, something to see, and something where we can say, yes, what I see fits into one of these categories. If it doesn't fit into one of these categories, it's probably not a foul. Another thing that's helpful with looking at the categories, in addition to just giving us some guidance, is it gives consistent language that we can provide to a coach. And if we're all giving these same categories and using this same language when giving information to coaches all around the state, they will start understanding that we're talking with one voice. They can use it then to coach their athletes up as they get ready for the game. The other thing to notice about all of these categories is the language in them that's italicized. Materially restricts is listed in there 3 times. Materially restrict, materially affect, and a takedown is listed as taking to the ground. If you take someone to the ground, you have definitely restricted their ability. Material restriction is more than just grabbing the jersey and tugging for a second. It's actually causing the opponent to lose their step, lose their ability to do something. They end up doing something unathletic. They lose their feet. They lose their general stride. They get jerked around. They basically lose the ability to be an athlete. Now, a player who just lets himself be held, lets himself be restricted, he's not being materially restricted. If a player can get pulled by his jersey, but he can just run right through it or just runs right through that block, it's not material restriction, and it's something we can let go. So keep in mind these categories as you go forth and take a look at everything in there. When you see something, ask yourself, is that grab a material restriction? Did it affect the play? Could it have realistically affected the play? Is it close to the point of attack? And remember, the closer something is to the point of attack, it doesn't take as much restriction as it might from 5 or 10 yards further down. And those are all things to think about. But the bottom line is, before you throw your flag, be able to say, I see this action, it is material restriction, and it fits in one of these categories. Let's go ahead and take a look at a few plays to give some examples.